Thank you for tuning in and checking out another episode of Unlucky, a memoir. My name's Kat. Everyone has a story. This one just happens to be mine. All right, there's a little housekeeping from last week that I realized that I got carried away in the story and didn't include with the whole story. First off, I mentioned the documentary I'd seen. And there was purpose behind mentioning that I didn't get to because I got kind of caught up in the story. Apparently, before we had gone to New Vrindavan, the documentary states that the leader that was in charge of New Vrindavan, because they had people all over the world at different areas that were in charge, that the religious leader at that spot after Pahrab died. So the guy there, he was a little extreme. And besides there, I mean, all of the places started in California that the Christians were responsible for bringing um, hash into the country. Like they were one of the first real importers of hash in the United States in that around that time, or the largest. And they were doing that to fund their cause. But the guy at New Vrindavan went to some heavier extremes, um, demanding loyalty. And apparently he had a few people killed, one of them killed on the property of New Vrindavan, and his hitman that he used to use buried the body under the riverbed that ran through New Vrindavan so dogs or nothing could find it. And then another devotee was trying to leave and take his children with him because he didn't like the way things were going. And they stopped him and by force took his children from him and returned them to their mother. And he left. He ended up going out to one of the places out in California and meeting up with devotees there and worshiping there, but stirring up trouble, uncovering documents about the leader, because the Krishna conscious movement had its own newspaper and had a lot of things that were recorded but not printed. But he got access and released some of those, putting that leader from New Vrindavan in a really bad light. He sent his hitman out to California to find this guy, found him sleeping in his van outside another devotee's house who he just used the shower. He would just live in his van, and killed him in his van. And that hitman guy, he got caught for that murder. And he was interviewed after incarceration. And the person interviewing him really didn't expect much but a stone wall and just not much of anything. He outright asked him if he was responsible for killing him, and he admitted to it, along with a second murder he had committed for the leader at New Vrindavan, and told them exactly where the body was buried. And they went, they dug it up, found it. So that's why in the beginning of last week I mentioned that previous to our trip, and then they regained it after our trip many years later, the designation of being the largest Krishna conscious holy site outside of India or anywhere else in the world. So that was to go back and clean that up as to why I mentioned the documentary in the beginning anyway. And second, if you remember from last week, me talking about, me and my best friend, we were talking about staying and getting a room for us. And one person in particular was very, very against it. And she would tell everybody there, like, we can't do this. You guys are going to get converted. She was more worried about everybody else getting converted. Well, during our trip, wouldn't you know it, she was the one person that pretty much converted to Christian consciousness by the time within in under 48 hours. And I'm not sure how long that stuck, and that probably was due to the gentleman who was showing us around, who she most likely found attractive and was attracted to. But yeah, that was a little bit of house cleaning I wanted to do from last week's uh, episode. I had realized when I was editing that I had forgot to mention those things, and at that point, I had to get the video up, and it was a little too late. But now, let's get into this week. So I figured I'd talk about some of the trips to North Philly and the chaos that ensued in some of those trips. There was one trip where a friend who was actually on the Krishna trip, he had driven us to Philly. I think there was 4 or 5 of us in his car. It was a nice, I think might have been brand new, red Passat. And we went to a location down on Lee Street, which was way far outside our normal zone, but I had come across really, really good big bags over there. So we pull up on the block. I get out and I walk over to my guys, and they explain to me that they're out at the moment and they're getting ready to re-up. So just hang out. And it takes a little bit longer and a little bit longer. And I can see my buddies in the car getting a little anxious. So the dealer tells me, hey, you can hang out. You're fine. They have to get off the block and then come back for you. So I walk over and tell them this, and we're not far off of Broad, and there is a McDonald's not that far from there. And I send them out and tell them, I go, just go hang out. I'll call you as soon as everything's good and have you come back. They pull off the block, leave, and I go back over to hang out with the guys on the corner. And maybe 5-10 minutes later, they drive around the block and kind of slow down, and they must have circled the block a couple times, because my guys finally were like, hey man, just get out of here, just come back in like a half hour, we'll be good. So I flag them down, they pull over and park, and as I'm walking to the vehicle at the end of the block, it's a one way going to the left. A police officer drives by, and I'm like, this isn't good. I get in the car and explain to them that since they blew up the spot driving around so many times, that they asked us to come back. So I get in the car, we go down and take the left. And as we pull up to the next block, the cop is parked across the street facing the wrong way on the one way. We make another left. And immediately, as soon as we make that left, his lights are on. He's pulling us over. He pulls us over and comes up to the window, starts questioning us. Then he has us all get out of the car. I remember he had us in behind the trunk, and he's questioning everybody if anybody has anything on him. He looks at me and he's like, do you have anything on you? And I said, yeah, I got a half a bag of dope in this little pocket in my jeans. And go, I have a little bag of dope, half bag of dope in the pocket of my jeans in case I get sick. He goes, what do you mean in case you get sick? And I remember telling him, don't act like a rookie. Well, I pull it out. He makes me dump it on the ground. And then he asked me if I have any works on me, any needles, any rigs. And I said, no, they're in the trunk. He says, all right, leave them there. Then he starts asking everybody else. And at the time, I had grabbed a couple of vials of crack while we were waiting for the dope to show up. And It's funny, the person that was on the New Vendome trip and whose car it was had purchased me a pair of winter boots from, might have been Walmart, but they were Sorel winter boots, which were like the really nice winter boots with a liner, with a little bit of fur around the top. And so I had wedged the vials down inside, in between the liner and the leather. And they never found them or never patted me down that far to check. But everybody else had a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and they made them all dump it on the ground and stomp it out, and then break their needles on the ground. Then the cop said, well, you can't leave those there. And he made everybody pick them up and put them in the trunk. I forgot to mention, after he pulled us over, the paddy wagon pulled up right behind him. So I was almost positive we were all going to jail that day. But my buddy opened the trunk and they started putting the works in there. And my works are sitting right there and the cop doesn't say anything. So I got really lucky. Didn't have to go get a new set, because back then it wasn't just as easy as walking into a pharmacy. You had to get them off the street or needle exchange. Not convenient. So they're stripping this car. I mean, they're looking behind door panels. They're pulling the side mirrors back. I mean, they're really going to town. And they don't find anything because we really don't have anything other than the little bit of stuff we had on us, which wasn't a lot. So then for some reason, the cop comes back to me. And he goes, so what do you think I should do with you boys today? And I said, personally, I think you should let us go, but I'm not sure if that's in the cards. He goes, well, today's your lucky day because I'm going to let you guys go. But I tell you this, if I ever see you in my precinct again, even if I don't find nothing on you, I'll plant something on you and you will be going to jail. So we get in the car and start driving away. And my buddy who's driving the car, he starts heading back towards the highway. And I'm like, well, what are you doing? And he goes, well, because the cop just said if we don't get out. I'm like, go over. Actually, we were on Diamond Street. I'm sorry. I go over to Lee Street, which is way across town, and back towards in our old hood where we used to cop. And that was another really good spot. So he's like, yeah, but I'm like, it's a different precinct over there. I didn't come all the way to Philly to go home empty-handed. So we ended up going over to Lee Street and copping the dope that we needed before heading home. And I have a few more stories involving Lee Street and other adventures in North Philly I'll bring up next week. But with that, I want to say how much I appreciate each and every one of you for coming on these adventures with me, coming along this path and hearing my story. With that, I'll see y'all next week.